Thanks everybody for being here. If you want to go ahead and throw in the chat where you're calling in from, would be great to know where you guys are around the world.
Love the feel of it. There you go. Hey, Mike. Yeah, tell me where you're calling in from. That'd be great. See if I can guess. So I see Joey and Chad and Brenda. Okay, do you remember that? Like that was probably before you had the early child television in the day. You'd have to pretend you were looking through a looking glass and seeing the kids at home. Oh. You just say a bunch of random names and you're like, oh, she saw me. We were simple back then. All right.
No one's thrown it in there yet. I'm in Atlanta. I feel like I'm always here.
What's going on in Atlanta? Christina said. Oh, chat's disabled. We gotta.
Oh.
Okay.
Wow.
There we go. It's coming in through the Q&A, but yeah, chat was not functioning.
Okay.
I wonder what I did there.
How did that happen?
Thanks for telling me, everybody.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Dallas, Anastasia, we are coming to Dallas. We're just talking about, figuring out a trip in November. We're excited about that.
Oh, there we go. Now it's fixed.
All right, thanks. All right, we'll say it again. Hey, folks, we'd love to hear where you're coming in from. We're just going to give everyone a minute or two. New Orleans, love New Orleans. Greer, South Dakota. I say I've never been to Greer. I don't know really where that is, but I'm excited to have you here, though. Fort Erie, Ontario, know that place well. Huntsville, been to Huntsville.
Oh yeah, what are they known for? You're always good with a fun fact about a city I've never heard of before.
You know what, and I'm embarrassed because I don't remember which school it is. But there's a school in Huntsville. To save me and by putting in what schools in Huntsville, please. But it's the Rocket City. Sure. Okay, thank you, Brenda. Okay.
Very fun
I'm
fact.
usually pretty good at that, but it was a consulting gig I did down there.
Nice.
Which is how I usually travel, my friends. I'm not well traveled for leisure. That's all right.
Huntsville, Ontario.
Yeah, very different climate than Huntsville that I've been to, no doubt. But I'm sure it's lovely. Brother. All right.
Yeah, I don't see many more rolling in, so we'll go ahead and kick it off. Thanks everybody for being here. We're chatting about one-on-ones today, and that's the new name that we're going to be giving to the feedback section. And I'll give you some more context on that in a bit here, but just to set us up with the agenda, we're going to do a quick intro to Jim and I. We're going to chat about high level, really what are quarterly and annual discussions, and then get into like an overview of the product. So looking at the feedback tool specifically, quarterlies and annuals. And then we'll also talk about a couple features that are coming soon. And when I say coming soon, the Fit Check, aka People Analyzer, is actually coming out next week, it looks like, which is very exciting. Yeah. And then Light Users is available for testing right now if you're interested. So we'll chat about that too. And as you guys have questions, I'll call this out right now and I'll maybe repeat it a couple more times. Throw them in the chat as you think of things. Mike's up here and he's going to be collecting all of those and putting them onto an issues list for us so we can talk about those at the end. Or we might just pick them up and answer it. I've got the chat next to my screen. So if anything makes sense to pick up and talk about right now, we'll do that. So I'm Christine, I'm head of client success here at 90. So I'm going to be chatting through the product, telling you a little bit more about what's coming soon and even some of the changes that we're going to be going through over the next couple of months. And then we've got Jim here too.
Hi, thanks, Christine. I'm Jim Haviland. I'm a coach. I coach all my clients in 90, and I actually part of the team here for the partnerships team here, helping coaches be successful and growing new partnerships. So, and I'm going to be walking through how. It's really an important part of this, Michelle. Michelle, I was talking to Christine. What's something that's important about this is making sure we have the understanding of the best practices that make these tools so valuable, right? That's really what makes this really a magical combination, is the combination of best practices, what we call concepts, tools, and disciplines. That combination of things. So I'll be bringing that to part, and I'm always good for forming an opinion at CDS. So
yeah. So before we dive into this, I've already mentioned a couple terms that are going to be new to you guys. So as you probably have seen from some of the communication we've been sending out, our license agreement with EOS Worldwide is ending. So a lot of these terms that were trademarked in the system that we've put in there are going to be updated. This is not happening until more of that October timeframe. So just want to call that out. It's not happening immediately, but you will see those changes. So we're going to be throughout this call just talking about things as we're in that new 90 world with the new terms, and then the software that I pull up will also be those new terms, but they all relate back to exactly what you have access to right now.
yeah, for those of you running EOS, or what most people do, a version of EOS plus other things, minus some things. I mean, it just really gives us a much more open playing field to keep adding features. There's always been other parts of our world where we were able to add features that were not pure and approved, but we're not going to be able to add so much more to your experience at this point, and really learn from what we see our clients doing and asking for, right, Christine? I mean, it's really the thing. Right. As the world changes, there's always advancement. There's always new and better ways of doing things. So as we learn these things, we're able to put it back in the software, so your experience gets better and better over time. So we're super excited about what's coming next.
Yeah. And if you guys have questions about any of that stuff, I'm trying to be like as transparent as possible throughout really this whole transition process. Yeah. So we do have a series of Q&A set up really through October. We're doing them every other week at just various times to accommodate schedules. So you can sign up for those, or happy to chat through any specific questions here. So like Jim said, some features being updated, but we're going to be communicating about that a lot before you actually see them in your account.
All right.
To dive into the coaching. Yeah, Jim, take it away.
Well, so, all my clients are struggling with this, hey, what is this remote work thing? And how do we make that work within our organization? And what we know is that it was always, we know that high trust organizations are what really are most growth oriented, most able to grow, and also most resilient. So we have to get to the place where we have a high level of trust within our organizations. And there were things that were just automatic when we're all packed together in the same building or in the same room sometimes. And we just have to be more intentional about how we make those same things happen. We got to make the connections happen. We have to have contact time. We have to spend time getting to, building those connections within our organization. And we also know that leadership, an important part of leadership, this is one of the things that GNC things that I think, Gino points out, is that we grow and become managers. We never really, most of us never get taught how to be a good manager, how to be a good leader inside an organization. But understanding that there's two different parts of this. That is connecting people to the vision, to the culture, and being very intentional about what that means. So, have I communicated to you in a way that you can understand where we think we're going and why you're on this journey with this? And you're not here to do your work and go home. We hope that you're really engaged in that, because just turning the crank today isn't your job. Your job is to understand how turning this crank helps us get to where we need to go and make changes so we're going where we need to go. That's really, there are no jobs where you can just do your work and go home. There shouldn't be. So your job is always to make it better and better towards a long-term goal. So helping people connect with what that means to them is an important part of what goes on. Then perfectly connected through the right meeting cadence is one of the things we're trying to get to. This notion of being perfectly connected. In a lot of operating systems, they talk about some very specific meeting cadences, and those tend to be pretty good suggestions. But the reality is that the feeling we're trying to get after, the filter you should use on your meeting cadences is really about staying perfectly connected, which means that I feel like I trust that you're working on the right things and I'm working on the right things, that we know what each other are doing, that we feel like we know when to talk to each other about something, when we have to get together. That's the point. It isn't that we have to meet every week. Meeting every week's good, but maybe your team needs a daily stand-up. Maybe your team needs to go to a monthly cadence for a while because quarterly is too long. Because like maybe, I don't know, Christine, if a pandemic came along, right? It might become important to meet more often because you can't see far enough ahead. Just think about 90 days and be effective. So that's so the understanding that perfectly connected is the filter we're currently using here. Then the last point here is that great meetings have a consistent agenda and cadence. I can rely on this meeting to happen at a certain time where I know what's going to happen and I know what we're going to talk about. It helps relieve the tension and the question like, hey, when am I going to have this problem addressed? When am I going to know that we're okay about this? When am I going to check in with this? And that's part of that, coming up with the right meeting cadence. What we'll talk about today is that one-to-one connection between someone who's working and someone who's leading and managing that person, that when they're coaching that person towards being their best self. And that one-to-one connection, that has to have the right meeting type, the right meeting cadence. You're perfectly connected. We'll give you some advice on that, but understanding that, feeling like there's a lot of trust there is the point. I also want to give a shout out to some great work that I reference all the time by our founder, Mark Abbott. He's got a paper out there, and I've given you the link there. It doesn't work when you're doing your thing, does it?
I know. I was like, oh, I'm just going to copy and paste it in. And then, of course, you can't do that.
Drat. That's all right. So there you go. So it's not very long, but it's a great paper. I teach to my clients all the time. But there really is a path you can follow towards trying to build a high trust set of relationships within your organizations, that you can reliably check in on yourself as where you feel about trust within the organization. And it's just three components: character, connections, and competency. And I'll give you the easy answer here. Character is a 1 or a 0. So either I trust your character or I don't. If I don't trust your character, Christine, there's no chance we're going to get to trust. We stop right there. Game over. Gosh, I have to solve that problem. That is an issue. I just don't trust you, right? When people say that they have to have integrity on their core values, I always go, really? Would you keep anyone around that you felt had integrity? That's an easy one. That's a permission to play. So,
yeah,
right, exactly. So connections and competency, you want to that is a combination of giving yourself a 0 to 100 score and a percentage score, right? So you want to get to a place where you've got 100%, but that's a hard thing to get to. But how do you feel about how connected we are, how much time we spend together to really understand each other? That's what you can do something about for sure, right? That's what we're going to talk about today, is establishing that connection through the right conversations, through the right meeting cadence. And the competency is just about me. It's also helped by having that right connection. I better understand what your competencies are and then what I can do about it. And as a leader in an organization, hopefully there's plenty of leaders here that have to give quarterly discussions. You're going to see some of it here like, okay, there's work I need to do to make sure that my folks have an opportunity to be successful, not just I'm relying on them to do a good job. It's my job to make sure they're successful if I've hired good people.
Yeah. And I thought we actually did a really fun exercise during one of our lunch and learns internally, where we went through this math of trust and we just picked a random, like my group picked Starbucks. And so it's like, all right, what's our trust score with Starbucks? Like, do we feel like they have the character? Yes or no? Like, how connected do we feel to them? Like 1 to 100. And then like competency, like, do we feel like they're doing what they're saying that they're going to do? And so it's an interesting exercise to go through when you like even pick something specific that's maybe outside of a person that you're necessarily like working with or interacting with. Yeah.
And this is a great example of one of those tools beyond the original tool set, because here's an actual way of breaking down a big question. How much trust do we have amongst each other, and breaking it down into simple questions you can actually answer, There's a process, and now I need to go do some things about it. And then, what we would do about it is like, hey, let's have these conversations. Let's spend more time. And that's often the problem that we see is like, hey, I'm not spending enough time to properly lead and coach this person. So
yeah. And it's a great setup because that's really what the quarterly and the annual discussions are all about. It's like, how can we keep building and increasing this trust amongst one another?
That's right.
So I'll let you go through and kind of tell us a little bit about like what's a quarterly and what's an annual discussion. And I know there's probably some opinions about maybe not everyone liking the annual because it's like you don't want to wait a whole year, but I'll let you kind of dive into some of that.
Yeah. So here's what we say. Is that you're going to talk to people on a regular basis. That's one thing. But there's a very, very real and very different conversation you need to have with everyone that you work with every quarter. It shouldn't go any longer than that. Because once again, that's so much of what we do is about that 90-day cadence, why we're called 90. Because that's, as human beings, it's about as far out as we can plan. It's about as far as we can put something off. Anything longer than that feels like it's never going to happen. So you need to have a chance every quarter to check in bi-directionally. It's a discussion. Like, how do I think you're doing in your job? How do I think I'm doing in my job, to you, both ways, right? And that's really what makes it valuable. And it has to be a discussion. It is an opening to have the discussion. So, hey, I don't see you displaying this core value that much. Tell me about that. It's like, oh, I'm not spending enough time with you, or there's things I don't see, I think they didn't realize, or we had misalignment on what that core value is all about. All of those things are great discussions towards getting to a place that you have a more perfect union between the two of you. And that's what we think is the minimum time frame to have these conversations. At 90, and Christine, I don't know if any of my folks report to me or listening, they'll say, at 90, what we're supposed to do is have these check-ins at 30 and 60 days as well. So because so you don't want anyone to go veer off track. I mean, it's the perfect air. Somebody described to me as like flying a plane or driving a boat. You don't just do your navigational check once every 90 days, right? The best pilots are constantly rejiggering based on the wind's blowing, something's changed in the weather. Because I wanted the straightest path is one where I don't go veer too far off. If I go way far off, my fuel calculations are going to be bad. And Christine, we don't want the plane to crash. So the best thing to do is to keep that line as straight as possible by checking your navigation. And that's what the risk really is. It's helping you navigate more appropriately.
Yeah. And I feel like that's like an interesting point because we do have these concepts of the quarterly and the annual in the software, but we're not saying like you choose one or the other. You're really like doing the quarterly and then the annual is there in case you want to add in those extra, like maybe you're having a compensation conversation. Like what are the extra things you're doing at that fourth quarter, but you're still doing that quarterly. It's not the either or.
That's right. I mean, I think we know that a lot of companies have very specific reasons why they have to have, some type of annual conversation that's different from the quarterly. I mean, the main thing we're trying to drive, the main discipline we're trying to put in place and give you the tools to do a job is make it very easy, but substantive conversation that really helps keep everybody aligned. And Christine, I don't know, you've had so many of these, I'm sure. The reality is these meetings are super impactful on keeping your best people headed in the right direction. Am I right?
Yeah, 100%. And just getting that feedback from anybody about, like, I felt like I was in the dark on XYZ, and you're just really able to peel back a lot of the layers sooner than later. That things that might not have come up in just like your weekly team meetings and things like that.
You don't want to let it fester. You don't want to let it become, in the absence of good information, we make up things that are much worse. We will catastrophize. So you don't want to do that. So do everything you possibly can to have that quarterly conversation. And so the annual is basically the quarterly plus like some additional stuff. So if you've got additional things you need to ask, additional things need to happen in there, things you need to attach in there, no problem. We accommodate that in the software, but the real core here is making sure you're asking the right questions every quarter. I mean, one of the examples is we talk about, hey, are you committed to being great in your seat, right? And that changes over time, Christine. That is guaranteed to change. That's a real learning of the Evolution Revolution article by Greiner that all the operating systems are really based on, is that it's not that things might change in the future. Things are going to change. You should be asking yourself, when will I know this is wrong, right? When will I know this assumption is wrong? And so checking with people like, hey, are you still loving your job? What do you want to do next? And creating that opening, that very clear opening to right now, yeah, I'm not getting the same lift out of this because I've mastered it. I feel like I needed my next challenge to get to the place where I'm still working on mastery and I still have autonomy, the things that make us love our work. So,
I think that's a really interesting point because every organization is probably changing at a different speed, just depending on where you are, like how long you've been around, growth phase. But every organization and seat is in fact changing, and it should be, you should be getting better.
The quarterly and annual discussions you're working on the business in that one little conjoined world, right? So
right.
you've got the whole leadership team gets together and thinks about the entire business. Every department has the time to work on the business. You personally have your own quiet time, your time of reflection for working on you and you in the business. This is managing that one relationship. It's so critically important to make sure that you don't lose great people, because everyone should be really focused on that. You don't want to lose great people. You don't want to lose them for an unforced error, like they didn't feel like they were taken care of. They didn't feel like they were noticed.
Yeah. And so next, I want to take us through a little bit in the software, how to create conversations. And I'm going to show you something that's coming out next week, which makes the create conversation form a lot better. Filling them out, actually having that one-on-one with somebody and then adding in custom questions. It's a great point. Joel just wrote in the chat, I'm asking, like, are you still loving your job? Are you committed to being in your seat? So those are the types of questions you can add in as those custom options.
Right. Yeah, I mean, because you want to drill that down on that, so, and there's a couple of places that naturally happen in here that you get a chance to ask those questions.
Absolutely. So if you do want to have those customizations, we're offering those in the annual discussion right now. We're in the process of adding it to the quarterly, and I'll show you a couple other things that are in process right now. But all you do is click on that settings icon on the right-hand side, and we've pre-filled a couple that just like get your mind moving about things that you could be asking there. But yeah, you would essentially just throw in here like, hey, are you still loving your job? And these are all free text entries when we do end up going into the form. So it's a place where they can go in and just write down whatever their answers might be. So
we have a thing though where we're going to like put in other types of questions in there, right? That's like
yeah, exactly. So evenly we'll get to the
we're
point
going to
where
get that question any minute now, we are. So
you can do multiple choice, have a little drop down. So it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
For creating these, all you do is click this plus sign here. And then you're going to put in, there's going to be a title, you're choosing who's getting reviewed. So there's always a manager, and then you can select as many direct reports as you want to, and it's going to end up creating conversations with each of these people individually. So this is between me and Greg, and then me and Tim. And so if the seat isn't auto selected, it means they're in multiple accountability chart seats. And so I would just want to check which one I want to pull up, because that's going to affect what I'm doing that CCC for, which is our new GWC. And then you're choosing when is this discussion happening, because this person is actually going to get an email and say, hey, new quarterly discussion was just created with you. Here's the conversation date. So you would probably add it to a calendar
as part of this process. Like, know that you're going to fill out this stuff, and then they're going to get, say, hey, by this date, you've got to complete this because you're going to have a conversation, and it's important.
Yeah. And then we've got a couple settings here. What I'm going to do now is show you what the new form is going to look like. So as of next week, it's going to be a lot more clear in terms of, we still have the same title. You can add a description now if you'd like to. Choosing the time frame works the same. And this is a maybe, maybe not next week. We might have to hide it at first, but it's in the very near future where you can actually set them up repeating. So every single quarter, it's like, these are my direct reports. All right, it's going to create these 5 conversations, and I don't really need to think about it much.
I need that.
Yeah.
Feature. That's a great one. I love it.
And then you can go through, same thing, select your people, same situation, choose your seat if there is two. And then we do have a settings area where it's a lot more clear about, okay, who's seeing what, when, and what are they actually filling out. So in the discussion settings, you can choose the self-evaluation. So do you want people to evaluate themselves? For the manager, do you want them to have that managee evaluates their manager's option? And then for the meeting settings, so you can have a conversation back and forth with two people. We've been using this setting called formal for that. It was really unclear. We were getting a lot of questions about it. So now we're just saying, hey, do you want to actually hold a meeting between those two people instead of just filling out the forms? And do you want to reveal those answers prior to the meeting? So right now, how it works is each person fills out the forms and then the answers are visible even before the meeting starts. Now we're giving you the option. Do you want to hide them until you've actually clicked that start meeting option?
Yeah. And just, I would start with all those checked.
Yes.
And in lieu of, because you want to get to disclosure, you want to get to being open and honest as much as possible. Because you want to, the last thing you want to do is have people come to a meeting surprised, right? If you're going to give someone really bad feedback, then you probably want to hold back stuff and open it out to them right there. But they shouldn't. But if they're coming to that meeting surprised about negative feedback, you've probably not been doing a great job up to this point. That's not the point of this. The point of this should be that I'm trying to do the best for us to have a great relationship. And so, you know, we always see, and this is part of the teaching for leadership and coaching, is that you gotta give people feedback very quickly after you see something bad happen. So if bad things are happening, let them know right now, and let them know privately, one-to-one. This shouldn't be that. This should be more like, hey, accumulative things, we need to come up with a plan for how we're going to solve these problems. Or you've done a great job. I think you're ready for the next thing. This is how this is our plan for moving you on to the next place. So don't surprise people with what happens in these meetings as best you possibly can. That said, also don't send them something super negative ahead of time if you don't have to.
Yeah, if you feel like there's a better way to deliver
come
it.
prepared. Help them come prepared. It's like, hey, you're going to come to this meeting. I'm going to have some questions about this. I just want to let you know so you can have thought about it and respond rather than react. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out. And we do have all of these defaults selected on for that reason. Like, hey, this is probably a best practice to have all of these options available. And then these are just in those given situations where you feel like you might want to pull things back, you can go ahead and uncheck those.
Is this Alex's work, this redesign?
Yeah, it doesn't look so good.
He is brilliant.
I know. This is really just the start. So they're actually going through and redoing a lot. They just did, you know, this layout page, but we're going to go through the actual conversation forms as well and make that a little bit more clear also.
Not the original one wasn't good, but it's just like, you know, what a great evolution. I'm excited.
So what ends up happening is once you create it, it gets added to this list. You can see who the manager and then that direct report is. And then each person is going to be able to come in and start the form. There's been a couple questions about like, okay, who can see what? And owners and admins in the account can see everybody's conversations when they're completed. So they're not seeing things that are in progress. Whereas if you're not an owner or admin, you're one of these manager or managee roles, what's going to happen is you can see only the conversations that you're specifically a part of. So you're not going to have this long list. You're only going to have things directly related to you. So let's say I'm in here, I want to come in here and I'm going to start filling this out. Essentially where we're at right now is Tim is the direct report. I'm the manager in this situation. So right now I'm evaluating Tim. How is he doing with our company core values? So I have the plus, minus, and minus. I have the GWC section where it pulls up the accountability chart seat. And then those terms are changing to CCC up here. And then the accountability chart is changing to responsibilities. So just want to make sure I'm using those terms interchangeably for what you're seeing now versus what
you'll still have the tooltip to help you remind you what those things mean, but and then the titles over top of them. But and remember that the coaching here is that you want 3 yeses. If someone's a no, on capacity to do it, it could mean not yet, and you'd write that in your comments, like, hey, I think you could be there. But here's where one of the places where you might naturally come up with the wants it question is, hey, is this still what you want to be great at? And that's why when we changed it, we changed it to committed to being great at this role right now, right? So a little more nuance to it, a little more completeness to the sense that what we want to ask the question: are you committed to being great at this in the next 6 to 9 months? That is the point of seats in the first place. And someone asked the question. Catherine asked the question: can you review them for both seats at the same time? And this is why you don't want to do that, Catherine, is because you want to be able to have a separate GWC or CCC conversation about each of the seats. I mean, almost always there's one seat where someone really belongs and another one where they're just covering for a period of time. And you want to be able to say, and have different. I mean, I've done this. I've had this concept with people where they're in more than one seat, and they're in one seat because I begged them to do it, even though they never wanted it ever, and they did the best they possibly could. And I, answered honestly, no, they didn't want it. They absolutely did not want it. They're doing it for me as a favor, and thank you for that. So, be honest with what's going on there, because it impacts the outcomes. It does, and you can track that. Yeah. But this is the primary reason in this, and be quite frank too, they can have different answers for you on the bottom section on how they're doing in that role as well, right? So, hey, you weren't clear with me in this, about my responsibilities in this role. Oh, that makes it even worse. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good call out. Great. The third thing you're going to see is some performance information. So rock completion rate, did they get to-dos done? This is all based on the time frame that you've selected. So if you need to reselect any time frames here, you can absolutely do that. And then you can throw in general notes. So this just has some preset text and questions to get your mind thinking about it, but really any sort of like additional context you want to throw in here, you can.
Right. Yeah, Jessica's asking about whether you can print this out, and I'm sure you're going to show one of those. But that's one of the reasons why you really should put comments in there. Put the time into it, my friends. If you're looking to, your goal here as a manager or leader is to make this conversation positively impactful, truthful, specific, and positive about the person you're giving feedback to. And, so you want to do the things we always do. Like, these are the things I think were really great. These are the things I think we can need some improvement. This is what we're going to do about it. So add those notes.
Absolutely. And each section has notes in here. And so I know, like in the leadership and management areas too, you have only yes and no options. And so being able to add any additional context, I think, is really important. I mean, especially if you're answering no for any of these tangible examples, or like the way you were feeling about certain situations, is always really nice to have.
One of the things that I like that we've started doing on our responsibility chart, Christine, is that leadership and management, anyone that has that, I always say you should have measurables for every one of your roles for responsibility. You should at least know what they are, even if they're not on a scorecard anywhere. And for LMA or LAC, which I think is what it's becoming, it's 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 6. Obviously this is something that's going to change over time, but this idea of I should be able to get yeses out of most of these. We all make mistakes. We all have shortcomings, absolutely. But your goal should be to look at these, have your clarity time about making sure, am I truly letting go of the vine on this with this person on this role? Shoot, I'm not. Or yeah, I absolutely am, and move on.
Definitely. And if you guys do have feature requests, like we're obviously very much like digging in and working on this section. Like, one thing I'm thinking about right now is we've gotten a lot of questions of, can I change these? I want to update the bullet points. I want to have yes, no, maybe, like certain things like that. I absolutely want to hear more, because the more you guys let us know, the better we can prioritize things based on what people would use. And so we do have this provide us feedback button over here in the left nav. So if you are able to use that, this goes right into our Slack, right into our product requests. So we're seeing those and talking about those actively. And if you check yes here, it might be that Blake, our product manager for this specific section, will reach out and just like do a quick interview, because I know he's been working on a lot, especially some of what Jim mentioned, where it's like, hey, I want to be able to understand not only are conversations happening, but what's happening in those conversations, especially at the ownership level, where you're thinking like, okay, are my leaders doing well? How are people scoring them? So more reporting there would be really nice.
Yeah.
So once you're done filling this out.
Yep. They point out the attachments too. I think we had a question about that. You can add additional materials to this for review. And that's, quite often it's a certainly employees like to do that. I tell them, hey, if there's anything you think, you really were proud of, make sure you add it as an attachment. I want to make sure we've reviewed it and discussed it appropriately. Yeah,
that's a great call out. So you can load things into here, and then Jessica, maybe to your point, a bit more like, can I export this out and put it in somebody's, you're using a different like HR file personnel type system, you can PDF any of these options. So when you do finish and each person has completed the form, like you can see here, there's a PDF view form, so I can print that out, and it's just going to open up on a separate page and give you a breakdown of like what your responses are really side by side within here, along with your specific comments as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
once again, and also something you put in an HR file, or take the forms that they complete during the meeting that they write on, and put those in the HR file. All those are possible.
And this is an example of when we would have selected the feedback meeting is not happening. So what happened here is Michelle and I both filled out the forms, and then maybe we just come together and we talk about it outside of the context of 90. What we like to do internally, and I think what most of our clients like to do, is typically not this option, because you really want to have things like recorded and in here. And so you would select, hey, I want to run the meeting. And so when you're in there now, it's going to be just like toggling this on to make it formal. Again, that form is changing a bit, where it's going to be automatically on to having those meetings happening. And then what occurs is you're able to actually open this up and run a meeting and see the responses side by side and talk through things like really real time within here. I think I had an example of that somewhere, but now I can't find it. Of course. I don't know.
Yeah, Nibbit.
I know.
Sometimes somebody else is also using the demo account. Got it.
I might have one somewhere else. Let's see. Will light users be able to have their quarterly conversations as part of the rollout? So yes, if you want to use light users now, and maybe that gets back to where I'm going next in here. Oh, it's not next. I'll just talk through it. So the quarterly conversations and annuals, if you want to use the light user function, you can, and it allows somebody to come in and use this specific section for $3 per user per month. And so they have access to this. They can view your vision page. They can view your accountability chart if you'd like. But it gives you a discounted option for somebody that doesn't maybe need the full functionality of the software. So they would be able to come in here, fill out the forms, and have those conversations back and forth.
Yeah, and it gives you a place to really broadcast of like all the things in your vision and whatnot. I mean, you want to have a place where all that stuff lives, and so you don't have to extract it for people to find it. So. And
the other thing I do want to showcase on here is we do have the fit check, which is the people analyzer. And this is another way where you can do those reviews on people that you actually haven't invited to the system. So this is actually just a list of everybody on my directory, and I can create a new review for them. And it's going to pull up the seat that they're in. It's going to pull in the core values, looks at GWC, again, changing to CCC, again, changing a responsibilities chart. But this is a great way to kind of have those snapshots of like, hey, we're just hiring this person and seeing if they're a fit. Let's do a fit check. We're doing a initial assessment of our departments, and we don't want to do the full out discussions. Let's just do the quick reviews and see where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, it's a good way of, once again, breaking down, I'm really struggling with this guy. Well, let's just do a fit check really quick and make sure we're all aligned on what's going on there. Because this is right people, right seats. That's the notion of that. Right people is that whether they really fit your values, and right seats is whether they, they really want and capacity to be in that seat. So it's an important way of asking the question in enough ways so you can actually come up with an answer that's meaningful. And those things can become part of something you've saved. So, hey,
Right.
Let's just really, anytime you have to give feedback, it might be good to bring those things up. It's like, listen, today I'm giving you a plus on this. I'm giving you a minus on this because this is what I saw. Tell me about that. And that becomes a way of kind of recording that strike.
And the really nice thing about this is you're going to be able to see these things over time. We're going to add in some like warning type reporting where it's like, hey, it looks like this person is below the bar. So you're going to have some more like proactive things within here and being able to see a person more holistically, like from the time that you've hired them up to current. All right. I'll head back here. So I think we covered all of these. A couple other times that you might want to use one-on-ones, Jim mentioned it earlier, but just doing when you hire somebody, those employee check-ins at the 30 and 60 day mark and 90 days. I know for me, it's been so helpful because it's so easy if you're moving fast, just get somebody on board. They have their roles and responsibilities and you're like, okay, great. They're going to do exactly what I think they're going to do. And you don't know they're struggling in certain areas. And it's a great way to set context for how you're going to be approaching your relationship and building trust moving forward too. So they have the right expectations of what working at your company looks like.
Yeah. And like I said, just the core value strike conversations. I mean, really, and these happen. I mean, and it's a reason we do this is we want to make sure that we're finding people that are not a good fit and giving them the opportunity to decide, are you going to try to work on that? Or, so you can probably, so you're really part of us or not, because the biggest damage they're doing is to everyone that does fit at that point. So either the fit tool or the full conversation are great ways to make sure you're reviewing somebody in the context of asking all the right questions. And once again, you want to be able to make sure that you've got some standard process within your organization for, hey, if you're going to give someone some feedback like this, you should give them a fit check, right? If you're reprimanding someone, they should need a fit check at that time. And because it sometimes it's quite beyond that, but that what happened, but you want to make sure you're checking on things as well to know whether, just to see whether you got people above the bar.
And there might be those kind of ad hoc discussions that you're having. There's the exit interviews, someone's manager is changing. Like there's a lot of reasons why you might want to pull this tool out. And it's really just let's get on the same page and have a high level discussion about the roles and where that person's at.
Yeah, I mean, because it does generate those real conversations about what does this core value mean? How do I see it? What do these roles and responsibilities mean? How do I see it? And that's like we say all the time, we want to turn those expectations into agreements, and having the appropriate conversation is part of that. But the thing is, we always talk about the right people, right seat part, Christine. But I think but even more valuable is, I think, making sure having the leader and coach conversation. Make sure that as an organization, you're explicit about what you think it is to be leading people and managing people, and that's clear to the people that have to do those roles, and that they're getting feedback from the people that depend on them to be good at those things. So, and because it's great feedback on how to be better, because that's always the truth. We have to be working on ourselves. There's a path to mastery to being a good leader and manager. So you got to work on it.
So getting started, I would say hey, maybe it's sending them this webinar, which we're absolutely recording.
Yes.
We're also creating like a suite of training content moving forward, which is going to be great. So that'll be coming out in that October timeframe as well, which is going to be really helpful for you guys to get on the same page with your team of like, hey, we need to implement this concept. And so go learn about it. So getting your leadership team on the same page about what you want to do, holding some sort of manager training so that they understand not only how to use the tool, but why you're using it and the background behind it. Because the tool won't make sense if their managers are going to these discussions and they don't want the feedback. I don't want people to fill out the leadership and coaching questions on me. It's like, should be trying to encourage and get people in the right mindset for accepting feedback themselves even.
Yeah, that would, as a coach, I would say I would not be encouraging people to not get their feedback. Get your feedback, and hear it with a curious mind. So.
Yes. And all of this you can add to the process section, get it documented. So as new people are coming on board, they're getting the same training, they're understanding how things work, how managing and coaching works in your company. So a lot of that changes from role to role. And so it's great to get people oriented with really what you're all about outside of just what's on that vision document. You can get into really like how you're handling your interpersonal relationships internally.
It's the only way to really make sure that everyone's really clear and moving forward with as much velocity and capacity as possible. If they're worried about it, they're not sure, they're using energy you would otherwise really want focused on making good decisions.
Absolutely. And I already went over to this, that fit check, it'll be available next week, pulls up anybody that's on the directory. That includes your non-paid users. So if you just add anybody to your accountability chart or into the directory that you want to put onto your accountability chart, you're going to be able to go through and have that fit check review on them. Next one, beta testing, that light user function I mentioned earlier. So that's somebody that can come in, use one-on-ones only. They can use the quarterly and annual discussion. You can do the fit check on them. And they can also own their own personal rocks and to-dos, since those things are going to flow into those discussion points as well. So if they need some sort of management of like tasks and projects and measurables for their role, it's a great tool to use for that.
Yeah, I mean, in other types of HR software that are much more, broad and robust, you want to be able to quarterly set some goals for people, and the quarterly goals and rocks are not really different, but they could create those personal rocks and they'll show up on their My 90 page. And they still have all the stuff in there, so you can create milestones along the path. And if you're doing one-on-ones with them, help them make sure they're moving forward, because that's ultimately, we always often say that about rocks, is they're a great way for people to show the maturity to rise up in the organization and take on more responsibilities, their ability to not only get their daily work done, but also work on things that advance the cause. So it's a great management tool to get people the opportunity to have rocks.
Absolutely. And we'll head over to CDS, clarify, discuss, and solve any of your questions. I saw a couple of really good ones flow through, like about the ad hoc reviews and things like that. So let me pop back into my account, and we've got the issues list here. There we go, that we can go through. So I think we'll just
we have time for, I think we have time for all of them, don't we?
Yeah, I think we can roll down the list, and a couple we already covered, so we might just touch on them lightly, and then you guys just let us know in the chat if you feel like you want us to dive into anything deeper than we do. Will we be able to put JPEGs and comments of issues? Oh, I saw this come up when we were talking about like breaking in the license agreement and having new features. I don't know the answer to that because we haven't done it yet because of technical reasons. But I would say if you're interested in that, go ahead and throw it in the provide us feedback button. I'll let the product team know after the call too. But we haven't done it yet just because we have that attachments feature, but I know I would love it. I like to like screenshot and copy and paste things in there. So hopefully we can get some sort of
open it up and download it, nightmare. So 100% agree.
Yeah, I would love to have it. I don't think it'll be immediate in October, but I think we absolutely have to get there.
Yeah, but heard.
Just keep requesting it, and
everybody
will have to pay attention.
Give it plenty of votes.
Yeah. Who can view the results of one-on-ones? Owner admin role can view everything. If you're just a manager or direct report, you can only view the conversations that you're a part of, and you can only see them when both parties have responded and you've clicked finish. So you can save your answers for later and go back and keep filling things out. And the other person is never going to see what you wrote down until you actually click that finish button. So we're never letting people's responses affect one another. So you're not getting bias from what the other person wrote.
Oh, that's a solve. Yeah. But and then the one thing we got coming is reporting based on that stuff. We don't at this point have a good reporting mechanism for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. We touched on the personnel file earlier. So being able to export those to PDF is available in all cases. Reviewing both seats at the same time. You touched on that earlier, Jim, with just wanting really those individual conversations to be able to happen, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can have one meeting where you cover both, but obviously that's not a problem. But you want to be able to answer those questions that are really about fit in that role separately. And yeah, I could see a future time where you might just have the seat question, the right seat question, be the only one that's separate. But typically, I mean, even if they're doing rocks and to-dos, they're doing it in context of these two different seats, and being able to talk about them separately, because eventually, in almost every entrepreneurial business, people end up being in more than one seat, and then you have to eventually have the conversation about which is the more natural fit where you want to go, and this can be a way to help people get to those answers in a conclusive way.
Absolutely. One-on-ones, pricing. So light user pricing is $3 per user per month, and that's not getting grouped into those pricing tiers that we offer for new users. So those are just like separated out for you.
Yeah, but that is exactly the reason one-on-ones are the point for having the light user. If they can use the system, they can see the things you want the whole company to see, and they can use it for their personal use, but they're not part of a team. They're not contributing to in the L10s.
Yeah. Nice. How does that feedback button go right to Slack? Is that Zapier? It is. I'm like obsessed with trying to connect things to our Slack channel, I think. So this is the product we use is called App Queues. And so this pops up. And so I can go in without dev help and like control what this says or what the forms are. And then when they click submit feedback, a zap goes and sends it to our Slack channel, and it actually sends it to product board as well, which is a product management solution that we use for organizing and tagging feedback. So product managers can reach back out to you guys if they're like, oh, I have a question or want to dive deeper into a comment or anything like that.
Yeah, and I should say, my clients are always fascinated when they hear that we pretty much live within Slack, that we don't really send emails. They're like, I don't know how you could do that. It's like, it's just decide that's where you're gonna communicate.
Recording the webinar, absolutely, we'll be sending that out, and we always post it on our YouTube channel, so feel free to subscribe on YouTube and we'll post it there as well. All right, one thing that would be nice. Oh, new employee checklist. Yeah.
It's one of Jim Haviland's favorites, because what we talk about is we create what goes into an onboarding rock, right? And we've got onboarding rocks both for the company and also for your seat. So your department will have an onboarding rock, and you customize it for everyone that comes on board. But this is a bit like a great application of exactly that thing with Christine. Because what I've often said is I want to be able to take steps in the process and turn them into rocks automatically, I like to say. I
know. And now I'm like, oh, I wonder if I have one of those examples in this account. But I might not. So we would typically recommend you have like a whole onboarding section, maybe like in an HR core process. And then you could break down within here and say, okay, here's the rock that I want set up for every new employee. And you can have links to all the things that you might want them to go read or watch or whatever it is. And so with these, like, let's say this was my onboarding rock process, I can open it up and then I can turn it into a rock right from here, just by clicking rock instead of issue. And then it's just pre-filled with maybe all the milestones and things I want them to go off and do.
Yeah, the goal of our onboarding rocks is you don't feel like you're new within 90 days. You got to get to the place where you're no longer saying, well, I'm still new here. Nope. That's not a thing. We're going to help you get there. And we'd be really explicit about what we think goes into that. And then on a regular basis, taking feedback and applying that to what the onboarding rock looks like. And it gives everybody a chance to play with the software from the very beginning because at this point, those process things don't create their own milestones. That'll be a future development, but it makes everyone create their milestones, give them dates on them, and which is a great thing to just learn how to start using the tool. Christine.
Yeah, I think it's a great question and great point. And I think in that additional like training and resources that we're building out come that October timeframe, this is probably one of those things we can put in there and say like, hey, here's a great template for you to go off of. And then obviously you're going to completely customize it and make it your own. So I think there's a lot of great opportunity for things like that moving forward.
100%. Yeah, but by making a rock, you can have multiple watching it and keeping track of it and making sure the right things are happening. You know, multiple own the different steps. I mean, the rock process is a great one for managing that through. But yeah, making it easy to get started is great. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Yes, love the idea of ad hoc fit review. Is that something that would happen when we're trying to IDS issue to decide if a person or process? And will these fit reviews be saved for historical review? They are saved and you can see them over time. And Jim, I'll let you take kind of that first part of that question, talking about like when those would happen.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really, you know, the part of Gino's original teaching was you should have a tool that you go to whenever hey, something doesn't feel right about what's going on here. Is it, you know, which thing is it? And this is, you know, over time too, you get to the place where you don't need the documentation of it. You're just like, yeah, the problem is this guy doesn't, you know, our number one core value is GSS, you know, GSSD, get smart stuff done. And so, because we realized, and that was the most recent one added, because we realized that if you weren't kind of oriented towards progress at all times, you're probably not going to feel comfortable here. And we're going to go, what the hell are you doing waiting for somebody? Just get smart stuff done. So, but we can, you know, all the time we'll go, you know what, the problem is this guy isn't GSSD, right? So you get to that place eventually, but it's better if you can document it. You can say, yeah, let's just go through this and ask the question and break it down into questions, you know, smaller questions that I can answer more definitively. And say, do we really think this guy GSSDs? No, I probably sometimes. Okay. Do they really, you know, are they really team oriented? Oh God, not really. You know, so yeah, so we're breaking it down. I agree. It's a great place to look at it. It's when you've got a problem. Is it a people problem? You know, if you get, you know, if it's the right people, right seat issue, that's going to uncover it.
Yeah. And I think to your point, Jim, like, and maybe the nature of this question is, I think it will come up when you're going through like that IDS process, when you're talking about your issues, and then maybe you're going to take a to-do, or a couple people are going to take a to-do to go fill out a fit check on that person. And so you can come back the next week and report back and say like, here's why the process was broken, because we found out this when we actually took a step back and thought about it through the lens of the fit check. So I think it's absolutely something that comes up, and you'll probably just like create a to-do around it to go accomplish.
100%. Good question though.
Yeah, good question. And then sandbox, is there a sandbox to show new employees or managers doing quarterlies? Oh, that is a great idea. And I think that's a lot of times the problem I run into, even when I'm doing calls like this, because you have to have one person has to complete it and then the other person has to complete it to have the conversation. And so it would be great, I think, if there was that sort of like sandbox dummy option. I really, really like that.
Although you can create fake ones and then delete them. So, I mean, it isn't like,
You can.
it's kind of like with meetings where you just want to test the meeting and see what it's going to look like. It doesn't become part of your permanent record. You can delete it. And so it doesn't become confuse anybody. Wait, we had a 10-minute quarterly? No, we didn't. I was playing with quarterly. I was testing the meeting tool.
Yeah.
And I deleted it. So, but yeah, that's a great idea that you just have sandbox mode on any of the tools probably.
Yeah.
We're working on that with the responsibilities chart as well. Well,
Yeah.
we'd have a sandbox approach
Yeah.
to that. So you can test out things like, okay, what is our, I know one of our coaches that works internally here, Chris Snyder, he does this with his clients when he does the 3 year. He says,
Mhm.
okay, what's the chart going to look like in 3 years? We asked the question, how many people are working there? And I've done this where we're like, okay, there'll be 10 people in this department, 5 people in this department, but let's actually lay it out. Like, oh, okay, now I can really picture that. And that's really the point of the 3-year plan.
Yeah. And you really like read Donna's mind with that question, I feel like. So that's exactly what you're talking about, Donna. It's like, is there going to be that ability to have forecasting and accountability charts and like have that kind of strategic planning lens? And so within that AC, we're looking to have a draft version. So it's like, I can have my own sandbox that I can go play and tinker in and invite people to. And then I can also save whatever version I want to create. So maybe our company as a whole has like a 3-year, a 1-year, a current, and then maybe there's other branches off of that based on things that other leadership team members or anybody's playing around with too.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite outside tool sets that I've encountered in the last years, there's a scenario planning tool that one of our coaches in Europe uses that requires you to go through and create, what would our vision look like if this thing changed, and what would our accountability chart look like if this thing changed, and be able to kind of build those things out. Because quite often, and these people, things you don't want everyone to see. I mean, should we have a plan for if a recession comes and we only have 50% of our net revenue? Yes, you should have a plan for that. That's how you keep resilient. That's how you honor the work that your people are doing. You should know what that's going to look like, and we want to give you a tool to help capture that, so you have some thoughts about it and can get to the best answer.
Well, Donna says made her day, so
yay.
We can't wait to add it. I promise. We did just get another
Deb right now when it's going to be ready.
Yeah. Is there a way to easily move easily with the org chart, like an entire team shifted to be led by a new team member? I would say a couple maybe ways to do that. So let's say sales and marketing is now going under operations. Maybe that's kind of like the example we're working with here. I can pick up and move this entire section. So what I'm going to do is click this move to button in the bottom. And then I'm going to look for my operations seat here. So this is moving the seat. I'm selecting a new manager for sales and marketing. And so it completely picks up that section and puts it underneath operations now. So I would say that's the best way to move things. If it's truly just a manager changing out and there's not much changing in terms of structure, you can remove and add a new person here. So those are kind of your two options as far as like adjusting things.
Yeah, we've had some other feedback on other more graphical ways to think about moving things around, but you should be able to do that stuff pretty easily. If you ever get stuck and you think, gosh, there should be an easier way of doing this, make sure you click on the chat button, because those folks are smart as all get out. They come back really, really fast, and they will keep you from making, if it feels like, oh my God, there's going to be a lot of cut and paste effort to make this thing happen. It's like, no. Ask them first. There's probably a way around it. Even if it's not the most elegant way, they've got the workarounds for you.
Yeah, we'll help you out. And then is there a link for the scenario planning tool? All conceptual right now, but one day.
Yeah, when I say tool, it's not a software tool. It is a set of teaching materials. But I think, but yeah, we're looking to other things we can include in here, and I think it's that could be something that happens. But yeah, it's not going to be software for a long time.
Yeah.
Good thought though.
Yeah. And I think that clears the list. I don't think I saw anything new come through chat either. So we're
Nope,
like right
that was
at the
it.
top of the hour. Awesome. Well, thanks for the help, Mike.
Excellent.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. Expertly done, sir.
Yeah. Well, if nobody has anything else, I'll say thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. Again, we've got Q&A sessions through October. So if you have any questions about what the transition looks like, new features that are coming out, whatever it is, definitely register for those. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I mean, we want to make sure everyone's got a really clear thought about how these things go. There's no reason to hold off. Just ask questions. We'll disclose anything we can. Thanks, everybody.
Yep.
Thanks, Christine. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. See everyone later. Bye.
Bye now.